where you need it to be on Friday night, Black Friday. Florida State takes down the Gators 45-38. The first on-field rushing since 1996. You're seeing the scenes from Doak right there. What a win for FSU. They moved to 9-3 on the season. Kevin Noles and that Seminole defense clamped down in the second half, and it was a party at Doak Campbell Stadium. This is Seminole Sidelines. We are on YouTube live. We've got a packed show ready for you here on this Sunday afternoon. We hope you guys are joining us here and excited as we are. Aria Masudi, Pat Burnham, Mark Salvo will join us in just a second as well. We're hoping to have Charlie Ward on tonight, former Heisman Trophy quarterback. And, of course, Kurt Weiler will give us his thoughts later on in the show because Florida State is 9-3, Pat. They have a chance for a really good bowl game. And more importantly, they snap a 3-game losing streak to the Florida Gators. What a game it was Friday.
Yeah, it was listen, if this is what Mike Norvell and Billy Napier have planned for all Florida State matchups, I'm here for it. Listen, you mentioned it was a roller coaster ride that ended with 50,000 people on Bobby Bowden Field. It was a fun game, and it's been a fascinating season. Florida State started this season, and it's kind of come full circle, right? Started the season by beating one of the SEC's best brands and finished the regular season by beating one of the SEC's best brands to finish 9-3, move up to 14th in the nation today in today's AP and coaches poll. First 9-win season since 2016. Mike Norvell's first victory over Florida. They did not play in 2020, of course, his first year. Fascinating game, fascinating season, and it was a fun ride Friday night as it was all season.
You saw an image of Jordan Travis there. How good was he? Has elevated himself to one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the ACC, but in the country.
Well, listen, every game he does something impressive. And what was probably most impressive about this game is that, they did not find any consistency in the passing game on Friday night. But what he did with his legs and when he was able to find open receivers and able to get clean catches, he threw for 275 yards, or 270 yards. But what he did with his legs and leading his team, and he's been a warrior since he started taking over the quarterback position 3 years ago. But he was absolutely phenomenal, and no shock there, right? We've seen him make plays time after time, either with his leg or his arm. But he was certainly the best player on the field Friday night.
And I think that was something we were all anticipating, right? Who would be better between Anthony Richardson and Jordan Travis, two guys who have flashed all season long. Richardson, I thought, had his moments and looked good. He's a ton. If you haven't seen him play, it's a mix of Cam Newton, Tim Tebow-looking body, and we thought that FSU would have to have the better quarterback play on the evening to win the game, and they did.
And they did. Listen, Jordan found the bigger plays in the pass game. They both found plays in the pass game. But there was something about Jordan kind of carries his team and wills his team. And listen, I thought he was the best quarterback coming into the game, and certainly that proved itself out at the end of the game on Friday night.
Pat, before we bring Mark on, how impressed were you with the way the Seminoles ran the football yet again, the 7th straight game in which they go over 200 yards?
Well, listen, first of all, and we'll have Mark expound on this a little bit later, 7 200-yard games in a row is unbelievable. Listen, they did so despite its offensive line not playing its best game. We won't listen. There's no reason to be negative. We just Florida State just beat Florida. But listen, Trey Benson bounces off people. He and Jordan both created a lot of their own yardage. But listen, the play calling set that up. To do that against a Gator front that's well respected, again, very impressive 7 times in a row. And Mike Norvell and his offense continue to do what they do, which is run over people.
Yeah, so Florida State runs for over 200 yards. Again, Florida State needed to do that, and the Noles now with their 9th win of the season. Keep those comments coming in. Let us know your thoughts on FSU's win over the Gators. Ask questions away. Hoping to have the Heisman Trophy winner, Charlie Ward, join us in just a few moments. But right now, let's go ahead and bring in Mark Salvo, former Seminole, current Seminole. Used to coach as well. Mark, have you caught your breath after that game Friday night?
No, I didn't get much sleep. I was so excited.
Well, what time did you end up going to bed?
Oh, geez. I don't know, because I went on YouTube and I watched a condensed version of the game again and started to look at all the press conferences, listening to what Mike and the guys had to say about the game. And just, I don't know, probably about 3 a.m, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a fun night, and it was. Listen, the show we did after First Impression show, we did for an hour. I think we could have talked a lot longer about that game,
Right.
and certainly. But just before we break it down to offense and defense, just your overall impressions of the 45-38 victory over arch nemesis Florida.
Well, first of all, the atmosphere looked incredible. And I know you guys were there. I can only see it on TV, but it translated well on TV. So you knew the emotions were running high on both sides. And look, going into the game, we knew we were going to get nothing but the best version of the Gators. They've been inconsistent all year. I mean, I watched that Vanderbilt game, and I'm going, there's no way that this team beats us. But then, I watched some of the other games. I'm thinking, okay, they have talent on this team, and we're going to get their best version. And that's exactly what happened. Not only that, they had a plan coming in, how they wanted to play us. And there were, they were successful in some ways. But, what's really give a lot of credit to FSU and this coaching staff, they have answers. When teams present problems, we have answers. And, that has a lot to do with the personnel that we have. But that has a lot to do with these guys understanding our schemes and what it is we want to do, that we can do things in the middle of a game and execute. Says a lot about how this team is coached, how these guys take it seriously in their preparation, and how they prepare and how they compete.
Yeah, well, listen, we've got a lot of time to talk about this, including tonight's show and future shows, as we will have a bowl show next week when it gets announced who and where Florida State will play in a bowl game. But listen, we talked a little on First Impressions Friday night. This team ends up 9-3. It certainly exceeded the expectation I had for it. Just talk about, before we get into the game itself, just talk about your overall thoughts on the 2022 season.
Well, obviously exceeded expectations. I think I was going to be happy with 7, hoping for 8. Looking and when you looked at each game individually, which games we might win, we might not win. First of all, I think the LSU game for me told me that we can beat anybody on our schedule, and we can physically match up with anybody on our schedule the way we played that LSU game. So that gave me hope on the outset that we could have a really special year. And then, of course, but the thing that manifested itself that gave us a little bit of a problem was our depth. So we got some guys hurt in key positions, and that kind of played out into the middle of the year where we had that 3-game losing streak, where defensive line depth became an issue. Jordan got banged up in the Louisville game, and we went on that little run. But I think that the thing for me that really, sprung this team loose was that open date week. Because I think we were mentally tired. I think as much as anything physically, needing to heal up, I thought mentally we kind of looked tired. And getting away from football for a day or two, I think did this team so much good. And in having that open week and being able to prepare for this stretch run, I think was key. And I think that, Mike did a great job of handling that part of it, giving these guys just enough time off and then preparing for this stretch run. And I think the fortitude and these players really wanting to finish strong really manifested itself. And man, we had a great run here these last 5 games. So, not 9 wins, hoping for 10 is really exceeding expectations and has rebranded this team. And people are now starting to re-fear the spear. Right.
Without a doubt, too. And I think, we talked about it on First Impressions, boys, where we had questions on whether FSU was going to be able to handle the biggest test of their season after the bye week, right? So after that bye week, Florida State plays a lot of teams that they're just going to overwhelm. Really, whether it's the line of scrimmage, whether it's with the talent that they have available at the skill positions, and they did what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Beat bad teams by a lot. But then here comes Florida, a much different test. And the question was, how much better has FSU gotten? Can they finish in close moments? Can they not make critical mistakes when the game is on the line? And it felt like whenever they were presented with those question marks against the Gators, they responded in the third and fourth quarters.
Well, listen, we talked all year about this team being able to respond and how much resolve it has. We even saw it in the losses. We saw it fight back against Wake Forest, fight back against Clemson, and come back to make those one-score games, last series games where Florida State was in yards of tying up the game or taking the lead. So we've seen that resolve. But certainly, with Florida coming off a loss to Vandy and Florida State coming off 4 really huge wins that were by halftime and a pressure-packed game for coaches and players. Listen, it was a national game of the week, a lot riding on it. You solidify your season by beating your arch rival, which they did. And listen, I think it speaks to the mental toughness of this team, the focus of this team. We've talked about that all year. But this team seems to respond to whatever challenges it finds itself in. And listen, it did at halftime. It was down 24-21 and ends up, and we'll talk about the third quarter on both sides of the ball here in a minute with Mark, but came out the third quarter and responded the way you would want a team to respond in a game that against Florida.
Yeah, without doubt. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, this team, the one thing going into this year that we wanted to see a team that represented this university, that fought hard and played hard and had great attitude and effort every game. And I think you got that for 12 games. I mean, easily, right? And again, enough talent on this roster and enough playmakers on this team that if you get that, you're going to be in every game and you're going to win a majority of them. And that's exactly how it manifested.
Well, Mark, so we can do a deep dive into what went right and what went wrong as we continue to go along. But at the end of the day, when you have these type of games, you're going to go through adversity and everything's going to go right. And it did not for both teams, but particularly for Florida State. They struggled a little bit in the passing game outside of some big plays that were crucial big plays that certainly needed. They needed those big plays. But, Jordan Travis did find some big plays, but it wasn't his best game. But from a throwing standpoint, but it's one of his best games we've seen him play just from a leadership standpoint, his ability to make plays to help will his team along. Just talk about his performance and probably more so, we've always described him as a warrior, right? We've said that he's going back 2 and 3 years now. Just talk about how not only his game, but how the way he plays and the way he carries himself impact the huddle and the rest of that football team.
Yeah, wow. I think the number one way you can describe Jordan is he's a competitor, right? And look, modern football, the way it's constructed and the way the rules are, is so dependent on your quarterback, especially with the offenses the way they're designed now, and with the way that with the spread offenses and how targeting is. You just can't have open shots on receivers. Smaller linebackers, nickel defenses. I mean, it's just so quarterback dependent. And so unless you have a competitive warrior at that position, you're going to struggle, right? And just about every team. You look at all the teams. Now, let's go back to our team. The last 4 weeks, we haven't needed Jordan, right? We haven't needed him to be the Jordan Travis we saw Friday night because we were playing teams that were really struggling and that we had a significant advantage on the line of scrimmage. And we didn't need him like we needed him Friday night. So there's a couple of things with Jordan. I mean, he sets the tone with his competitiveness, right? And it's just really inspirational to the rest of the team. I mean, when you see him running around back there making those kinds of plays, that just gets everybody excited, And the other thing it does, especially in how it translates to the defense, is that he offers hope. No matter what happens,
Right.
No matter what happens, you got a guy back there that's going to make some plays, and it gives you hope that we're still going to win the game, even though things might not be going our way in the moment. And so because of that, it just lifts the whole team. Because these games are so quarterback dependent, and because you've got a warrior and a competitive guy who's not going to quit, who's going to make plays, the rest of the team goes, we always have a chance to win the game. And that's what that brings.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is, we've seen he had like 4 or 5 really amazing runs where he was hemmed in and should have been brought down and eluded or, somehow outmaneuvered defenders. And, we're sitting up there in the press box and you're in awe of it. And it's almost like you haven't seen it before. And to your point, he had not been used in so long, you almost kind of forgot. I mean, you just
right.
Forget what a weapon he is. And the reason they have not been had to use him this year because you have a Trey Benson behind him. But anyway, it was all right. Just your thoughts on Jordan's performance.
I mean, it was incredible. And I think, the larger point of that with we can ask Charlie this in a moment, too, a guy who started to revolutionize the quarterback running the football back in his heyday. But Jordan was predominantly a running quarterback when he first came to Tallahassee, right, from Louisville. And it felt like, the first sign of trouble, Jordan would rely on his legs because that's what he'd always done. And it had worked at a high level for him in high school and when he got to Tallahassee, and that's what allowed him to get minutes.
Yeah.
However, as he progressed in Tallahassee, I think he wanted to prove to people he could throw the football.
Right.
There are times this year I feel like he could have ran the football a little bit more, and he sat in the pocket. Either took a bad hit, had the ball stripped away, and there was moments you went, all right, last year that clock would have ticked so much faster. But this game, it felt like the perfect balance, right? It felt like he waited in the pocket, and when he felt like that pocket was collapsing, he got out. And he made two of the most incredible runs I think any of us have seen a quarterback make, not just this season. And certainly I hope our former Heisman Trophy winner was his breath was taken away seeing the way Jordan Travis was escaping some of those pockets. But those two runs, I know he didn't get credited for a touchdown on either of them. They said his knee was down right at about the goal line. But Charlie, I mean, what were you thinking when you're watching Jordan Travis dodge about 4 sacks there on 2 separate plays?
Well, I definitely was like Houdini, especially on one of them where it was like 4 guys around him, and he showed his strength that you've seen in improvement from this year, for this year, and just the way he was able to make plays down the stretch when we needed him. Especially on 3rd downs, you could tell he was either going to make the play with his arm or he was going to find a way to get the 1st down. And that's what you have to do as a quarterback. You read the room, and whatever it takes to get the 1st down, you make sure you make it happen. And he was doing that very well. I was just discouraged that he didn't score the touchdowns. Yeah. He kept sliding. I don't know why he was sliding into the end zone. I understand, working to avoid the hits, but there are other ways you can get into the end zone and take minimal force with his ability to be able to make guys miss. So hopefully he learns from that moving forward. But I was impressed with the way he competed and made plays. He's been doing that, all season. Yep. And he's made it his point, after that North Carolina State game where he threw that pick when they had an opportunity to win the game. And since that time, he's been great.
Charlie, just talk a little bit about the impact of his brand of play. He goes all out every play. We talked a little bit about it coming on the show. Wasn't necessarily a great night passing the ball, although when he found the plays, they mattered. But just talk about his, he overcame that, made a lot of stuff happen with his legs, something he has not, done on a regular basis this year because he's haven't been in games where he's had to. But just talk a little bit about the way he plays football, impacts that huddle, and impacts that football team.
Well, he's definitely shown maturity and the leadership, from last year to this year. The coaches have given him, autonomy to kind of do different things as far as making checks, having input on the game plan. Those are things and opportunities that you normally don't get when you're first year or second year. But when you've been around for a while and you start to understand the system, and the coaches feel comfortable, and you can tell, it's his team, and they trust him, they believe in him. And I've always said, whenever you have a team where your quarterback, where everyone trusts your quarterback, defensively, you're trying to get the ball back to him because you want to give him opportunities to be able to make plays. Offensively, that he's going to spread the football around, whether it's in the run game or the pass game. You just trust him to make good decisions. And you've seen that maturity, that growth throughout the year, this year, from last year to this year. And it's huge. That's one of the main reasons why they have 9 wins this year is because of just Jordan's leadership, and the quarterback position plays a big part in the success of a team. You can make or break it with your decision making, one way or the other. But I'm grateful that we have a guy like him who's matured, and the coaches have trusted him to make plays on the offensive end. And he's just one guy of 11 that's out there that's executing. But when that one guy's your trigger guy and he's pulling all the right buttons, pushing all the right buttons, it plays a big part in the success of a team.
Without a doubt. And I think, those 11 guys, especially on the offense, Mark, we'll start with you. And then Charlie, would love to hear your thoughts, just transitioning right after Mark. This FSU offense has been explosive all year long, and it led the NCAA in explosive plays. Charlie, back in your heyday, your offense was known to create explosive plays. Mark, you were right there alongside it, seeing it with your own eyes. Mark, what have you seen from this offense schematically that's allowed FSU to take full advantage of the weapons they have and to be able to create 20-plus yard plays all season long?
Yeah, I love this offense. I really do. And I talked about it earlier in a couple other shows, but just the options that we have at multiple positions is incredible. With number one, the talent and the personnel that we have. We have a lot of variation in the kinds of receivers that we have, the kinds of backs that we have, the tight ends, the skill sets they all possess. And, Alex and Mike do a great job of designing plays and schemes to really highlight their talents. We have every personnel group you can possibly imagine, multiple formations, shifts, motions. And I think the thing that really sets it all up is the commitment to run the ball, right? You present a lot of problems to a defense when you can scheme the running game. And we scheme the running game in a lot of different ways with all those different looks and things. And to have 7 games rushing 200 yards or more is incredible. I mean, I don't think it's been done since 1987, right? And that was a pretty good offensive line, except for the center. But, the other thing you have are the inventory of plays that they have. And I gave you a couple examples. The tight end delay that we ran to Cam McDonald, to Cam, that was in the middle of the third quarter. They held on to that play. They didn't get to that play until the third quarter, right? The other one, and then we run a bunch of plays, and then one that we almost hit was Toafili down the middle on a tailback vertical, and the refs missed a call there because 51 held him right before he released. If he had a free run, he was able to catch that ball and score. They held that play till almost the fourth quarter, right? The TD on the fake jet sweep speed option that we did to Trey Benson. That's the only time I've seen us run that play that I can think of. And ironically, that's the exact same play that Florida tried to run when we stopped them on 4th down in the very first series. It was the exact same play, and we ran it and got a touchdown out of it. I just thought that was a nice little irony there. But my point is this: no matter what a defense presents, no matter what problems they present, and they presented plenty, trust me, we'll talk about that. But there's always an answer. We have answers to problems that defenses present, and they do a great job of getting to those answers. And the guys do a great job of executing it. And that's why I love this offense. And that's why we're able to generate these big plays. Because when every defense, there's always a risk reward with whatever they try to do. And whenever we get a beat on what they're risking, we have a way to get to it.
Yeah. Charlie, your thoughts on the explosive plays?
Well, the good thing about it is, I've always talked about a team that has balance is very successful. Especially whether it's offense or defense, or special teams, really doesn't matter. You got to have balance. And our offense is well balanced, meaning the run game pops for 200 plus yards, but we also pass for over 200, plus yards. And then the ball is being spread around to numerous guys. So it's not just one guy that you have to focus on. And if you try to focus on that one guy, then it's somebody else that pops up, and we bring him into the fold. And so that's a product of the coaching, as well as the quarterback making the right decisions in the passing game, because he has a lot of autonomy or decisions to make on each play. Some plays are designed to go to certain guys, but sometimes you have to just make plays on the go. And so balance is very, very important. I think if you have multiple talents like we have from an offensive standpoint, you can't focus on one guy to be able to stop. You think about Trey Benson, who had a tremendous run the last 3 or 4 games. He had a great season, but the last 3 or 4 is where you started to hear his name, 160 plus yards rushing. While Trayshawn was out, he kind of took over that lead back role. And, when you start to try to take him away, you got Toa Philly coming in. And then you got Trayshawn, of course, who he is. But if you want to crowd a line of scrimmage like most teams try to do, now you're getting beat over the top. They got hit McLean on a big post route. But the thing that I want to share is all these plays that they run, they're scripted. I went out to a couple of practices over the course of this season, and every situation that they're in, whether it's 3rd and long, they're practicing plays that they're going to run in those situations. 3rd and short, 4th and short. All those situations, they practice them, even though it may be quickly, but they practice them over the course of the week. And so when they get to that certain play, everyone knows what they're looking for. And so it's not just a happenstance that these plays work. They work on them, and they correct them on the film if they're not run properly in practice. And so it's something that you admire. And I'm happy to see them having success because they work so hard and put a lot of time in.
Yeah. Well, guys, this game really was evenly matched first and second quarter, and also the fourth, where we saw Florida try to make that comeback. But really, the difference in the ball game was that third quarter when FSU scored on 3 straight possessions to come back from being 24-21 to take a 38-24 lead. I want to ask you both this question. What did you see from the offense? What did they find in that third quarter that allowed them to be successful with those 3 drives in a row to put 17 points on the board and really secure the lead and really help them hang on to that to be able to win that ball game?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So, starting out the game, they had really schemed us pretty well for the running game. Obviously, the key to us with the success we have running the ball, teams are going to scheme the run, and they did a pretty good job of it. They played a lot of one single safety looks and crowded the box. But the other thing they did with their front was that really played a compacted front. They were going to take the edges away with numbers, and they were going to muck up the front with their big defensive tackles and thumping linebackers, right? So it really made running the ball consistently, difficult. We didn't get a lot of those, 4, 5, 6 yard runs. It was either feast or famine with the running game, it seemed like, for the most part. So I remember writing down this note about halfway through the second quarter saying, we're going to have to pass to set up the run, right? Again, they're presenting a problem. Our answer is we're going to have to throw to loosen them up and make them respect the passing game in order for the running game to go the way we want it to go. And, I think the best adjustment they made coming out of the tunnel at halftime was to put the game into Jordan Travis's hands. And that's exactly what they did. They started to pass a lot more. We started to, run some, we ran a couple of those, remember those little dart plays we used to run, Charlie, the back going out to the flat and then back inside. Got a big play on that one. I talked about it before, the tight end delay, just a lot of plays to make them respect the pass. And then when we got in the red zone, they were bringing the heat. And I mean, Jordan making plays when unblocked guys are coming off the edge. We'd run a trips on one side, single receiver on the other, and they were bringing 4 guys off that side, and Jordan just reversing out, a la Charlie Ward, Florida '93, right? And circling back, and Charlie hits Warwick Dunn. Jordan Travis runs down the sideline and pretty much scored a touchdown, right? But that was what they're doing. So they putting the ball in Jordan Travis's hand in the third quarter really paid off, because when the fourth quarter came and we had to score that last touchdown, they were really overplaying Jordan, and that opened up those couple counters we hit with Benson to score that last touchdown. And that was those things were blocked really well. Look, offensive line battled, man. I know, there were times when it looked a little whatever, but they were good too. They have tremendous guys in the middle, and they were set up to take away what we do best. And for periods of the game, they did, but we hit some too. Obviously, we rushed for 200 yards, and a lot of that was Jordan scrambling for about 85. But Benson had 100.
As he was not working, you can go to run. And so you're confident in both of them. And I think Florida did a great job, defensively of taking away the run early, like Mark mentioned. And then periodically we hit them with a run, a big run with Benson early, in the first half. And that kind of got them loose a little bit in the run game. But when it's all said and done, the coaches call the plays and the players have to make the plays. And then there's some plays that the coaches call and it doesn't look good. And that's why you have that dude, as they call him, who has a football in his hand. And when he can make plays where he made them, spinning out of 4 tackles, getting out of trouble, whether it's throwing the ball away or making runs for positive yards as opposed to a sack, that have those on your team. And so that's why I say, man, the quarterback position, if you have a guy like that make things right, when things don't look right, you got a chance to win every game. And so that's why I'm hoping that he does come back next year so we can have a chance to win every game, because I see him as a Heisman frontrunner next year. And I see him as, very similar to projection that I was on my junior year. We got hot late as a team. We lost 1 game, but we were hot late to finish off that year. And I came back as a Heisman. I don't want to say front runner, but I was a part of Heisman group at the preseason. And, our team, had a very, very good year. And we were able to, get in the conversation to win ACC championship. We won that. State championship, we won that. And then we were afforded the opportunity to be in the national championship game because we lost 1 game and it was 2 of the top team. One of the top teams, Notre Dame. And I just see us having that same type of momentum going into next year if Jordan comes back and some of the other guys who are making decisions to come back. Some of them are going pro, which is what they need to do because they may have opportunity. But hopefully a good portion of them come back to be able to continue the momentum that they have created this year.
Well, it sure would be fun to see another Seminole in the Heisman house. We've enjoyed your commercials this year too, man. So that's
Hollywood Award over here.
Fun.
I mean, come on now.
So Charlie, you would be your opinion is that you would like to see JT come back to continue to improve not only the Florida State's chances of having a great season next year, but also his chances of playing at the next level.
Yes, when we start talking about pro projection, I mean he's better than the guy that they projecting from Florida, UF.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the only difference is the other guy is 6'4", and whatever he is weight wise, and he can throw it a long ways. He made some really nice throws the other night. He had some drops as well. He didn't play a bad game. I actually played a really good game outside. I mean, like I said, first half he was on fire. Second half, I don't know if he completed a pass until the last drive. But I just think Jordan, with the maturity that he's made this year, next year he'll definitely be one of the top draft picks as far as the quarterback position as he continues to mature in the things that he's improved upon this year.
Well, Before we wrap up the offensive side of the ball, I think we got a question for both of you, to be honest with you. Obviously, you guys played in very successful offenses, and there may be some similarities between the fast break offense that you played in, Charlie, and what Florida State's doing now, but just from concept type. But how much would you like to play in a Mike Norvell offense if you were a quarterback or today's quarterback?
I would love to play in the system. I love the system that we played in during our time. This offense is very similar in a lot of ways, where you're spreading the football around. They have a lot more options today, but we didn't. Our offense, the fast break offense, was really very basic. We did add a few wrinkles here and there, but we were very basic. We just used pace to keep defenses off balance. But what they do here is they use a lot of motion. They use a lot of formations to run very similar plays, knowing where they want to put binds on the defense. And so, it's a fun offense. We didn't have very many design runs for the quarterback. But I would have loved to play in a system where you can run a counter and read off the back side in to be able to pull it or keep it. But, that is the fun part of it. And it doesn't really matter who's the quarterback in this type of offense. He just has to be efficient in running it. And so I would have loved to play in that situation in this offense just because of the multiple options that you have from a run game standpoint and a pass game standpoint as well.
Yeah, I think this offense is almost the perfect mesh between my era and Charlie's era. My era when we had Sammy Smith and Dexter Carter and Edgar Bennett and Marion Butts and Dane Williams and Pat Carter. We ran the ball. We were obviously committed to running the ball, and that for an offensive lineman is fun. It's running the ball is fun because you're the aggressor. You're the one that's taking it to the defense, and you're getting in all those piles and running guys into the ground and all that. That's fun for an offensive lineman. Pass blocking is not fun for an offensive lineman, right? Because you're retreating, you're trying to pick up blitzes, guys are trying to run over you. That pass blocking for an offensive lineman is not near as fun as run blocking. And the thing about this offense is they're committed to the running game. They have variation in the running game, different kinds of runs. And that's fun for an offensive lineman. But then you add that to the fast break aspect of it, where we have spread concepts, multiple, different kind of personnel groups, formations, different passing concepts. It's really the perfect mesh to it. It'd be a lot of fun to play in for sure.
Absolutely. So a lot of offensive talk here. Florida State, a big day. Over 400 yards, nearly 500 yards of offense. And again, the Seminoles continue to not just they're not relying on the big plays because they're now more efficient on a down-to-down basis and sustaining drives. But no doubt it's aided them to becoming one of the top 10 offenses in the country. So I see a lot more questions coming in on our YouTube about defense for Charlie and Mark. And so we should start talking about Florida State's defensive performance, a little bit up and down. But we'll do that after we talk about our friends from Alumni Hall who have been great partners for us. And make sure you get your Seminole gear holiday season coming up. And here's a message from Alumni Hall.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days. Or you'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store. Alumni Hall.
All right, welcome back to the studios. You are watching Seminole Sidelines live on YouTube. We will have a replay of this for you to watch, or if you want to listen on Apple Pods, on Spotify, and wherever else you get your favorite audio listening devices, we will be on there all week long. Pat, we're joined by Charlie Ward, Mark Salva, talking 45-38, big victory for FSU over Florida. Noles moved to 9-3. Sunday night here, presented by the Osceola. All right, let's talk some defense because Florida Gators came out punching, especially in that first half. They were averaging a pretty hefty yards per play, nearly 300 yards of offense for each team. And I guess, Pat, we'll throw it to you first and then kind of go around the panel. What were the Gators doing to have success against the Seminoles in that first half?
I'm going to let Mark and Charlie expound on it, but what they were doing is they were winning the line of scrimmage. I mean, they came out, they ran the ball effectively. They were not as dependent on the chunk plays running the ball as Florida State was, even though they found some. And listen, they took advantage of a couple of coverages that were either blown or not played correctly, and found a couple of big plays in the passing game. But certainly, that was rectified in the third quarter, specifically by Florida State's defense. But early success was Florida winning the line of scrimmage, in my opinion.
Mark, we'll go to you first. Florida averaged 8 yards per play in the first half. Yeah, they were hitting some explosives. Pearsall was killing Florida State on the 1v1s. And a lot of that, as Pat said, had to do with Florida's success, especially on first down and in the rushing attack. ETN, fantastic on the ground. Richardson was doing damage himself. Yeah. John Kitna's kid came in and was playing well for the Gators in a backup role. Mark, from your vantage point, what did you see from the Gators, and then what adjustments did you see from Florida State?
Yeah. Okay. So I might get a little technical here, but I'll just start out the way they're running the ball. Obviously, when you look at our defense, we have a lot of speed. We have a lot of, especially on the edges, and at linebacker, right? So Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach, they're fast guys. They're not huge guys, but they're fast guys and great tackles. They're physical players. And the way they negated that was they implemented a lot of cluster sets and a lot of tight end wings to take care of the edges, number one. Number two, they did a lot of motioning. They line up the trips on one side. They'd shift the trips on another side. Then they maybe motion back across to another side, did a lot of that kind of thing, right? And so now you've got the defense shifting, moving, safety inverting, rotating, corners running with guys, whatever we had to do to adjust. That takes a lot of communication, right? And then the other thing they did from a real technical standpoint was the kind of runs they were running, right? So when you run the zone, which is what they do, it's all about the landmark of the back, all right? So the landmark of the back. So, when I coached a lot of zone, especially at South Carolina, where we were real successful doing it. I studied it intensively under some of the best guys that ever ran the thing, like Jim McNally, studied under him for a long time. He was up at the Carolina Panthers when I coached at South Carolina, and I'd burn I-77 just to learn from him. But it goes like this. When your landmark of the back, and it happens especially when you're in shotgun and split, the landmark of the back is like around the tackle, the inside leg of the tackle. That gets everybody flowing, everybody running to the sideline as you run those zone schemes with the linemen, and the linebackers flow. And that's where a fast linebacker crew is really effective. What they were doing, they were running out of the pistol, and they were running what I call the inside zone. So they're running, the landmark of the back was the inside leg of the guard, right? They're running through those A gaps. And so what that enabled them to do is the linebackers don't flow. They got to flow downhill, right? But what that enabled them to do is to double team Cooper and Fabian, and then and muck that up. And then now our linebackers are running into those combos. And so they were able to really, and now you've also got the edges with tight end wings and trip sets really close to the line of scrimmage to take care of our edge guys and our safeties coming in the fill. And so they were able to really just create seams that way. And now the back has a two-way go. You saw times when Etienne would hit it and break to the play side. You saw times he'd hit it and break to the back side, right? Depending on how the linebackers react and safeties react. And that enabled them to really get into the line of scrimmage, make cuts, and use their skills in order to run the ball. So if you go back and look at that, that's what you'll see. We stopped some, we didn't stop enough. And, so with that, also with all that motioning and stuff, what it forced us to do was to play a lot more base defense, right? So when you're unsure and there's communication problems, you should be able to get in base defense and, communicate and adjust to anything, right? That's by definition, the base defense. And so, us having to do that enabled them to now really take advantage of some matchups, because now they're running the ball. Now they stick the ball in the belly, pull it out, and do a double move with Pearsall, boom, over the top, right? That happened a couple of times. And then you throw in the quarterback run on top of that. So how did we adjust, right? The other thing they were doing too is they were max protecting on those play actions. So a tight end blocking, the back staying in and blocking. They're blocking 6, single receiver, double moves. That's all they had. And so we were not getting home to the quarterback. We were not putting pressure on him. So come out in the second half and the adjustment, we weren't putting pressure. What are we going to do? Well, we started to play a lot of cover 1. In other words, single safety, man across the board, and then the linebacker looking at the back, the safety or the other linebacker looking at the tight end in that wing. And if they stayed blocked, they rushed. We called it a key blitz. So what turned into a max protect for them turned into a 6-man rush for us and enabled us to get more pressure, make, crowd the line of scrimmage better, and make Richardson real uncomfortable, right? And so able to do that. On top of that, the DBs played a lot tighter, a lot of more plays on the ball. They ran a couple hook routes, a couple fades, guys in position to make plays, knock the ball down, did a great job. And then on third down, we brought the house a couple times and really shook him up, right? So, that when we came out in the third quarter, those 3 and outs, you look at it, you'll see guys in the line of scrimmage. You'll see Kalen Billups standing right over the top of the center. You'll see another guy look right over the top of the back. And when that back blocked, he rushed, right? You saw the blitz on third down. You saw DBs making more plays. So, the last drive, they kind of got a little rhythm. They got back to what they were doing in the first half a little bit, started to get those runs. And then that last run by Etienne, which you saw was, I think we had some guys hurt. We had some guys in the game that hadn't played a lot. And they did that, go into trips, shift, motion. When that ball was snapped, Kalen Deloach's back was turned. And Etienne hit that gap right where Deloach was supposed to be. And he went in untouched. So that was a little confusion, communication when they shifted, and that was that last touchdown. But look, bottom line is those 3 and outs was the ball game. So that adjustment coming out of the tunnel was the ball game. And that's, to me, that's what I saw.
And Charlie, I guess go ahead.
I was just saying that was a little different than what we've I guess expected or we've done in the past. We're coming out of halftime, we've given up touchdowns. But it was a great adjustment, I do believe, by Coach Fuller, because as Mark mentioned, they were hitting us, gashing us with the run. And what they started doing was bringing the weak side safety down into the box on the runs. And if they ever went in motion, they started, whoever was guarding that guy that was going in motion, he started blitzing. And so some of those runs, he started hitting behind the line of scrimmage. And so they made that adjustment. But it was very key. We got a couple of takeaways. 1 4th down stop. We got an interception as well. Jerry Jones, who I'm very happy to see did well in this game. He got a pass breakup as well during the course of the game because I've been very critical of him in the past. But he's played really, really well these last part of the season. And I'm happy to see him because T-Buck told me he coached him at Mississippi State and the type of clarity he was. And I was like, man, I don't see it. And so now, I see what he was talking about. And so please forgive me, Jerry, for, criticizing him. But
was he calling you out specifically? Did you see his tweet? He was calling everybody out. He said, I read it. I saw it. I bet you won't say that about me anymore.
Well, I apologize. He was wrong. And like I say, man, people
gladly
criticize.
eat crow on that one, right?
That again? Yeah,
so you'll gladly eat crow on that one, right?
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm like, hey, people criticize your play. And if you're not playing up to par, then people are going to criticize that, and it's your job to respond on how you're going to respond. And I'm happy to see him respond to well. He's, like I said, he's been playing really, really well here. Vance Greedy, another guy, newcomer, has stepped up his game. He was trying to figure his way out early in the season, and this late part in the year, he's been rock solid, from the slot corner position. And so, but I think defensively, you don't want to give up that many points. I mentioned to Coach Fuller, when it's all said and done, just like as a quarterback, you want to have the ball last. You know, if you're gonna win the game and the game's on the line, you wanna have the football in your hands. And so the defense had the game in their hands. You know, they had a little cushion, but they had to get a stop, and it wasn't looking good because of penalties. Was aiding drives or keeping drives alive, but they found a way to get a stop. And I was very excited to see Coach not sit back on third down. I think it was third or fourth down when at the end of it, he blitzed them. You know, he was like, hey, it's 4th and 12 or whatever it was. We're going to get the football out of his hand and rally to the ball before he can get it out, if he's going to get it out. And so they did a great job of blitzing him and guys covering long enough to where they could get the pressure on him, and he had a throwaway. And so, you know, when it's all said and done, we were able to get the stops we needed, as Mark mentioned, you know, during the course of the game, and you never know when those stops are going, you know, what they're going to be like, or how the effect is going to have on the outcome of the game. That's why we always preach as coaches and even as players, you want to make sure that you plan every rep, because you never know how that rep or that series is going to affect the outcome of a game.
Yeah. And I think, too, we do want to move on here in just a moment to talking about Florida State's bowl picture, because for the first time in a while, they're bowling, and for the first time in a really long while, it's going to be a really good bowl game for FSU. But, Charlie, the last question, we've got one from Terry Vaughn, and I think it's a good one. So if you could just touch on it. When you played, generally speaking, were you a quarterback that enjoyed teams that schematically wanted to bring pressure and blitz you, or teams that emphasize more coverage?
Well, as I mentioned, one of the things that you want to be is balance. And so you had a plan for both. And the team that blitzes, those are the teams that you know you're going to have to beat one-on-one coverage as an offense. And you just have to find the best matchup. Sometimes they're going to be blocked up. Sometimes they're not. And then the teams that are going to play coverage, you know that they're going to try to help make you hold the football. And you got to find windows to be able to throw the football in. So, you know, when we played Nebraska, was a team that in the championship game, was a team that challenged us at the line of scrimmage. And we struggled for a good portion of it, but we did make plays against man-to-man, but they made plays as well. And they brought the house a few times to kind of try to confuse our offensive linemen. But we were able to overcome that game. And then there are games where teams play zone. And so that kind of held us down. So it really didn't matter. It was just a matter of making plays when we needed to make plays. But as a quarterback, it really doesn't matter if it's a zone or a man. You're still going to have to make plays, whether it's against pressure or not as much pressure, but you got to find get holes to be able to throw the football in.
Yeah, Charlie, I remember that 93 NC State game after we played Notre Dame. You remember that game?
Yes.
They blitzed. They came off the bus blitzing. And I think we scored maybe 10 touchdowns that game. I mean, there was just wide open guys all over the field. You did a great job of finding matchups. And even when the game was out of hand, they kept blitzing. And everybody's like, why are you guys still throwing? Well, if you're going to keep blitzing, we're going to keep throwing. I mean, that was the deal. You know, I think of that game when I think about you quarterbacks like blitzing.
Hey,
I think of that kind of thing. Yeah, we liked it that day for sure.
Mark, I got before we go to break, I got a question. Both of you can expound on it if you'd like. Listen, the Florida State game is huge for the Florida State head coach and the coaches, no matter what year it is. But there's optics in every game. How important was it for Mike Norvell and his staff to put a stamp on this season, on what's been a really great season, by beating what most people, at least record-wise, would say it was a disappointing Florida team. But this game is important no matter what the records are for both staffs. Just talk about that, and then what you think the legacy of this 2022 football team is going into the bowl. Most of the story's been written, got one more chapter, but just those two questions: how important was putting a stamp on the season with a win over your arch rival, and the legacy of this team?
Well, I mean, for me, it just validates the plan and vision for Mike Norvell and this team and this program. We're state champs, and kids want to play for winners and want to play for teams that are fun to play on, and that is kind of what this presents. So, to me, that's huge, right? It just kind of validates it when you look at a team that's in their first year transition, like Florida. They're going to sit here and cry and say they don't have talent or they're in a culture shift, which to me, I think that's false. I think they have talent, obviously. You can get away with a lesser season. So number one, it's important to show results to validate the plan and the vision. And for me, what I hope this is, it's the beginning of a foundation for future success. I hope this, one of the things I'm most proud of in my legacy as a player at Florida State is that my senior year was the year that started the dynasty, and I take great pride in that. And I'm hoping that this team is in a similar position, where guys like Maurice Smith and guys like Rob Scott and guys like Fabian Lovett and those guys can look back and say it was our team that started this run that Florida State's on now.
Charles,
very good point. For Coach Norvell, we were looking like what Florida and Miami looked like in year one of Coach Norvell's, reign here at Florida State, where everyone was questioning this, questioning that, questioning whether he would be, here long term, questioning the players, whether we had enough talent, all those things go into play for the RCA1. And then over the course of the last 2 years, he's made roster changes, brought guys in from the transfer portal, recruited really well over the course of that time. And now those guys are starting to produce under, the system. And I'm a big believer that if you give kids, stability, in a program long enough where they're running the same offense, running the same defense, they start to understand the nuances of the offense and the defense, special teams. You're going to start to see success when you have the athletes that are disciplined like we have. And you're starting to see that now with 9 wins this year with the potential of going 10-3 with the bowl win. And so I just think, the sky's the limit for what we're doing, a foundation, as Mark mentioned, to building something great to where we get back to expecting 9 wins and 10 wins and 11 wins, which was easy attainable this year as well. But looking forward to, the future, because now we're going to start to get some top tier talent coming to town. And those guys are going to continue to get better because of the system that coaches put in.
Yeah, a couple of sellouts, by the way, guys, this season at Doak. They are really excited about what's being built in Tallahassee. You had a field storming. I mean, come on, when was the last time Doak saw something like that? I mean, it was 1996 against the Gators, I believe, is from all accounts, and a lot of fun, guys. And
I was trying to think back when that happened. I don't remember that happening.
It was 96.
Yeah,
Okay.
They figured it out 1996 against the Gators, who were number 1 at the time.
Well, and to Charlie's point, that game, that atmosphere, the results of the season, the results of that game could have a very positive impact on the 2023 and 2024 classes moving forward for Florida State and Mike Norvell. There's no doubt about that.
Without a doubt. Excited, too, for those students who, by the way, the seniors who hadn't seen success for quite a while. They had a moment to be able to celebrate. And this is what good football looks like, folks. Those of you younger audience watching the college students, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. And I'm sure the FSU ticket office has been excited about the momentum that Charlie and Mark just touched on. I think we should hear from our friends at the Florida State ticket office. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, because then we got to talk about bowl tickets, and Kurt Wilder's going to come talk to us about bowl projections.
Stay with us. Here comes a word from FSU ticket office.
Hey, Seminole fans. Tickets to Florida State football games are now on sale. Right now, you can pick up single game tickets, 3-game packs, and season tickets for the 2022 season. Home games include Florida, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisiana, and Duquesne. Have fun this football season with your friends and family, all the while knowing that's Seminoles.com.
All right, make sure that you get set for FSU's bowl game because tickets will be there. The ticket office is your go-to place for all of that. Kurt, welcome, my friend. Welcome back to the Seminole Sidelines show. We got Charlie Ward, Mark Salva, Pat Burnham, Mario Masudi, and now we look ahead. It'll be about a month before the Noles next play their football game.
Kurt was on last week with Mark and I, and we mentioned then that Mark and I have been doing this show every Sunday now for 4 years. And I think
4 years, huh?
Kurt said, we do Sunday nights were podcast nights. We didn't go live television. We're not fancy. We're offensive linemen. We just kind of push things forward. But anyway, so Mark and I were just kind of let Kurt talk last week. Kurt and tune what's going on with the bowl. So it was one of the favorite segments we've ever done. So this is where I'm going to turn the show over to you and Kurt.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. I appreciate you, Kurt. All right. From your observations, I know you've been able to see different bowl reps at FSU's games throughout the year. You're keeping up with the buzz right now. What does it look like for the Noles? Where can fans start to make plans near that New Year's time?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a situation where you're gonna have to wait till Sunday to kind of make those final plans. There's no clear destination. I know a lot of South Florida Noles, I'm sure we're hoping the Orange Bowl, and it was a chance. I mean, the Orange Bowl reps were at the game Friday night. I think they wouldn't mind Florida State, but Clemson losing to South Carolina and meaning they're not going to make the playoff means either them or UNC, whoever wins the ACC championship on this next Saturday, is going to go to the Orange Bowl. So it unfortunately takes that out of the equation, and it looks like too the dominoes are starting to fall in place. Kind of, you needed one more team above you to lose, like for that at-large spot in the Cotton Bowl. So I think it's going to be one of those three: the Cheez-It in Orlando, the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, and the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. Just I don't think Florida State makes it out of that kind of tier right below the Orange Bowl, because I think all three of those bowls would love to have Florida State for different reasons.
I think all of our eyes, too, are on conference championship week. What games are you keeping your eye on to see how that impacts FSU's bowl scenarios? And is there an outside chance at a Cotton Bowl, maybe? What do you think?
I don't think so, because Penn State is in like a lot of those spots right now, and Penn State's not playing, so they don't have a chance to lose. So, no, I don't. I think you're kind of one of those teams losing. Like if Penn State had lost to Michigan State, maybe it opens the door. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I think they kind of have to go by rankings on that, a lot of that stuff. And so I think it's going to be Penn State and not Florida State.
Yeah, well, Shane Beamer didn't send to a lot of playoff dreams the last couple of weeks with what he's done with that South Carolina team. Kurt, if you had to kind of, and listen, it's all speculative, right? There's 1,000 things that go on behind closed doors to figure out who is going where. But if you could kind of rank, you mentioned the three, the Cheez-It, the Gator, and the Holiday. If you just reading the tea leaves, obviously anything could happen, but how would you most likely to least likely out of those three?
It's tough. I mean, I'm not like talking to the bowl reps a ton. I can't. But yeah, I don't know. One of the in-state one makes a lot of sense. I think Gator. I mean, that's obviously SEC, and that'd be a lot of fun. I think Florida State fans would not mind having a chance at a SEC win number 3 on the year, matching what Billy Napier had in year one at Florida. And like you mentioned, South Carolina, that'd be a potential opponent there. And I think that could be. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it a few weeks ago. That could be a really fun game with what that South Carolina team has looked like the last few weeks against Tennessee and Clemson. Cheez-It, I think would love to have Florida State too. It'd almost be a preview of sorts for that game. 10 months from now in 9 or 10 months from now in Orlando against LSU to start next season, and that would be, I mean, quite possibly a big 12 brand. Texas and Oklahoma are both, I think, in contention for that spot, and I think would be maybe not in Oklahoma. I think they're 6-6 now, but Texas, I think, is definitely in contention for that spot at 8-4. And I mean, that's a battle of two brands. And then the Holiday Bowl, I know, is probably the one Florida State fans want the least. I think a reason why Holiday Bowl might want Florida State is that I think there's reason to think that fan base would travel across the country a little better than a lot of other fan bases. And I mean, that'd be some Pac-12. I see you reacting, Aria. The problem is NC State's fan base going to travel across the country? I think the thing is, Florida State's fan base is bigger and normally more rabid. They do travel more for road games than a lot of ACC fan bases. So I do think their thought is more. I get what you're saying. And like I said, I don't think Florida State fans want that. I'm not sure Florida State wants that because, I mean, yeah, the opportunity to play with NC State would be a big deal for the fan base. But I mean, the Pac-12 is not bad this year, and there's some good teams out there you could be playing. It could be a chance, I mean, to get a 10th win in a bowl that would mean something if you did get sent out there.
Yeah, and I saw one projection talk about the Holiday Bowl today that was Florida State versus Oregon, which would be a fascinating matchup, to be quite honest with you. Obviously, don't know if Kenny Dillingham would be there to face his former boss. Yeah. Kenny Dillingham took the Arizona State job today, the former FSU offensive coordinator, and now – well, he's the former offensive coordinator in Oregon now, too. So, but anyway, long story short, I say all that to say this.
Against his boss, though.
What's that?
Dan Lanning would be going against his former boss, though, in his first
That's
bowl
true.
game.
That's true. That's true. The connections are everywhere in college football. College football makes for a very small world. But I say all that to say this. Who would you – I mean, this is for everybody. Who would you most like to see Florida State play in a bowl – outside of obviously any of the projected playoff teams? And Mark, I'll start with you. We talked a little bit about this, so you might be a little bit more prepared for this question than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, Gator Bowl and seeing South Carolina. I think that would be a great game. I think the way they're playing right now, like Kurt said, I like to get that third SEC win just to stifle this SEC dominant stuff that we tend to hear here in the ACC, and just bring some folks back down to earth a little bit. And full disclosure, I've already booked a hotel room in Jacksonville, so just in case.
we know who you're rooting for.
Maybe we're talking to the wrong person. Do you know something that we don't know?
Well, no. The thing is, we go to Orlando. I'm from Orlando, and I got family. I'll stay with family in Orlando, so I don't have to book a room in Orlando.
I got you.
But, so yeah, no, that's kind of what I think. If I was betting, I'd say it's Gator in South Carolina.
Hey, go ahead and book a hotel room in San Diego. And if you don't, use it,
I looked at plane flights.
I will take over the room for you.
I looked at plane flights.
You're going to use points anyway.
Well, that's maybe. I don't want to use all my points on that bowl game.
Right.
Charlie, what about you?
Yeah.
Charlie, who would you like to see Florida State play if you had to select a bowl game?
Say Bama. Come on.
I mean, Bama wouldn't be bad.
Let's go.
Bryce Young and Jordan Travis going at it. But I mean, South Carolina would be a good one. As we've talked about, Texas again would be one that would probably be a good matchup as well. When you talk about two brands and two teams that would travel, or hopefully they're in state for us. But Texas normally travels well as well. So those would be two solid games. Plus, Alabama. If we could play Alabama, that would really be, good to see, because now we get a chance to play one of the heavyweights in the SEC. So they won't keep talking about who we're playing in the SEC.
Yeah, and I think, Kurt, you talked about it a little bit too, but we joke about Alabama. I think that would be huge for FSU in recruiting a team that they could beat right now too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Noles could, but jokes aside, I don't know that that's going to happen, but I hope whatever bowl game Florida State gets, that it benefits the fans. Like Mark said, he's already booked Jacksonville. I think a lot of the Duval County Noles would love to see FSU be able to play in that stadium, because I mean the game was taken away from them with Boise State.
Yep.
And it's been a while since they played South Carolina. Greg Reed says hello from the Chick-fil-A Bowl back in Jimbo's first season, and Orlando would be great too, because wherever it is, I just hope FSU fans have the opportunity to easily travel to it, because bowl games are a celebration. At that point, you're celebrating a great season with a good matchup, and your fan bases are who they're trying to serve.
Yeah.
And so that's my hope. But Yeah.
My first hope is warm weather bowl, warm weather climate. But listen, I think I didn't even think about the Oregon matchup until the day when I saw it. I had thought about the Kansas State program. They're a fascinating team to watch. Very tough ball team if you watched them at all yesterday against Kansas. But I don't know if the Alamo Bowl's still on the table. But Ole Miss also would fascinate me. Yeah. Another SEC team. But yeah, Ole Miss, Bama. I'd take LSU again. But yeah, I would love to see them if I could. It'd be an SEC team just because of all we hear and I've heard for the last week about Florida and SEC and the bias that those people have for that conference.
By the way, Mike Norvell, Jimbo Fisher tied it 2 for SEC wins this season. All I'm gonna say is Mike Norvell wins one more. He jumps Texas A&M in the standings. That's how this works. That's how this works. And so a great show indeed, guys. I want to thank Charlie, Mark, for being on the show. Kurt, appreciate your insights as always. Joel, we'll let you bid them adieu as Pat and I try and promote the rest of what we have coming up on the Osceola. But great analysts here this evening talking Florida State's win over the Florida Gators. All right, guys, want to make sure that you know that we've got a lot of shows on tap for you. First and Noel coming up here early this week. Osceola Tailgate's been a lot of fun. You'll have a Know Your Enemy when we know who we're playing. Hopefully,
we'll do Know Your Enemy.
Hopefully some reeling them in. Maybe some recruiting pods.
We're gonna do some recruiting pods. Obviously, National Signing Day is coming up on December 21st, early National Signing Day. There were 3 young men that were on official visits this weekend. We talked to Jaden Jones. That article's up on the site right now. We will have more coming from that, but certainly Charles Fishbein and I and Kate Stransky will have more on recruiting as it gets closer to National Signing Day. And then, of course, we will be back next week to do a bowl selection show, reaction show to wherever Florida State does end up going, and talk a little bit about who they're playing. And then, Ari, I think what we'll do is kind of have a roundtable, kind of get the Osceola staff together and talk about the season that we've had a week to kind of soak it all in. 9-3 season, one of the most exciting seasons in recent history for Florida State, and certainly one that needs to be talked about more and needs to be celebrated more. Yeah, 9 wins. What a job they did. And this team, it made it enjoyable to follow, enjoyable to cover. Yes. The kids are enjoyable to be around, to watch. And again, they do it the right way. We talked about it on First Impressions. It's a team that is very likable. Yeah. From on the field to off the field, to the quarterback, to the head coach, and to the whole staff that they've been able to put together. And so that's a credit. It's a lot easier when you like the football team, not just enjoying them win football games. Well, listen, we've got great, we are lucky in this. We know guys that cover other teams all over the United States, and not very many teams, or not very many people that work on the other side in the press get as up front of you as we do with Florida State, due to those 2 days of access we have during a game week. And obviously, so we get to know these kids a little bit more just by watching them day in and day out. Not that we get to talk to them all the time, but certainly it has been a fascinating team to watch and a fun team to watch. And the great news is it has not come to an end yet. We got one more game, one more month with this particular version of Florida State football. Yeah, not over yet. Stick with us, Osceola.com, the place for all your great Florida State news. Want to make sure you know about our promotion right now. Rivals 22 is the code, and you'll get a 1-year deal for $22 this holiday season. Why don't you surprise your family, your diehard Noles friends? We know you love them, and come hang with us. $22 for the whole year. Again, that's Rivals 22 on the Osceola.com. You can watch Seminole Sidelines on replay after we say goodnight, and you can also listen to it on Apple Pods, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your favorite podcasts. Lock it in until next week when we have the Bowl React Show. I want to thank Charlie Ward, Mark Salva, Kurt Weiler. That's Pat Burnham. Thank you to Joel Silver for producing in his great studio. I'm Mario Masudi saying good night. What a win. Mark Salva, do you want to give us one Go Noles so that we can wrap this thing up?
Go Noles. State champs, baby.
Appreciate you.
We can't leave the show without Mark.
We can't. We throw this now. There you go.